hard to believe, but the holiday season is coming up again. At Quince, you can find all you need for the season. Sweaters, coats, holiday outfits, and everyday essentials. I just ordered a new sweater from Quince, a Mongolian cashmere full-zip hoodie. It will look great with black pants for holiday events, and it will keep me warm and cozy all winter. Your holiday shopping is a breeze with Quince because it has something for everyone. I love to save myself hassle by shopping online, and Quince has free shipping and 365-day returns, just in case you need to return something. Quince delivers luxury quality pieces at half the price of similar brands because they cut out the middleman and partner directly with top-tier ethical factories. Step into the holiday season with layers made to feel good, look polished, and last from Quince. Perfect for gifting or keeping for yourself. Go to quince.com/POTC for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/POTC to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/POTC.
We see so much get placed and blamed on technology. And we also see so much get blamed on the individual and kind of put on the individual as a responsibility. But in many cases, these are issues that an individual is having to bear the brunt of that was not an individual's fault to begin with, right? When we look at things like not having paid parental leave, not having affordable, accessible childcare, not having safe access to the outdoors, climate, disability, neurodivergence, not even touching on things like systemic racism. I mean, all of those things are going to make it more or less possible for a child to be out in the world.
That was Ash Brandin on Psychologists Off the Clock.
We are 5 experts in psychology here to bring you cutting-edge and science-based ideas to help you flourish in your relationships, work, and health.
I'm Dr. Debbie Sorensen, a clinical psychologist practicing in Mile High, Denver, Colorado, author of Act for Burnout and Mac Daily Journal.
From America's Heartland, I'm Dr. Emily Edlin, a clinical psychologist based in Chicago, Illinois, and author of Autonomy Supportive Parenting.
Calling in from Vienna, Austria, I'm Michael Herold, ACT coach, confidence trainer, and the author of an upcoming book on developing your confidence and social skills.
From Boston, I'm Dr. Yael Schoenbrunn, faculty at Brown University and author of Work, Parent, Thrive and an upcoming book about misunderstanding.
And from coastal New England, I'm Dr. Jill Stoddard, author of Be Mighty, The Big Book of ACT Metaphors, and Imposter No More.
We hope you take what you learn here to build a rich and meaningful life.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock.
Hey, listeners. You know the podcast is values-based work for us and a labor of love. The podcast industry has been a roller coaster ride, and there are some expenses involved in hosting a podcast. We'd love to keep bringing you great episodes, and we could use your support. Help us keep the podcast going next year and beyond. You can do that 2 ways. You can support us on Patreon. For just $5 a month on Patreon, you'll be able to listen to the podcast ad-free by making a one-time donation in any amount on Buy Me a Coffee. Think of it as taking a co-host out to coffee to thank us for the podcast. You can link to Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee on our website. Thanks for your support. And be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode for our co-host discussion of today's interview.
Ash Brandin, known online as the Gamer Educator, empowers families to make screen time sustainable, manageable, and beneficial for the whole family. Now, in their 15th year of teaching middle school, they help caregivers navigate the world of tech with consistent, loving boundaries founded on respect for children, appreciation of video games and tech, and knowledge of pedagogical techniques. Ash has appeared on multiple high-profile podcasts, including Rethinking with Adam Grant and Karen Feeding from Slate, and has contributed to articles featured on Romper, Scary Mommy, Lifehacker, The Daily Beast, USA Today, and NPR. Their best-selling book, which we're talking about today, Power On, Managing Screen Time to Benefit the Whole Family, debuted in August 2025. In their free time, Ash loves to hike, bake, play video games, and spend time with their family. Welcome to Psychologists Off the Clock, Ash.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. So I am not a huge Instagram person. I do my best to keep something up on my Instagram page, but I had several friends recommend your page at The Gamer Educator. You are phenomenal at simple messaging about this complex topic of kids and screen time. I've just had so many friends find comfort in your Instagram. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That is such a compliment. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate your emphasis on how you take a balanced rather than fear-driven approach to screens. And so when I saw you had a book coming out, I jumped on it and reached out because I knew our audience needed to hear your voice.
Well, I'm so glad. And I'm so glad that it resonated with you and hopefully with listeners as well.
Yes, I have no doubt it will as we dig deep here. So I'm going to cut right to the chase and get into the meat of where you're coming from, your perspective. You have a revolutionary take on screen time in families. View screens with moral neutrality. Could you explain that foundational idea a bit and talk about why that's such an important starting point?
This is one of the things that I think when people ask, how did you get into this? I'm like, I don't know. It was just sort of always in the ether for me of even growing up. Things that I enjoyed, like technology, they were just a part of my life. Like I didn't really think of them as being different in terms of morality. And honestly, I don't think kids tend to do that, right? I think they tend to view a lot of parts of their life with moral neutrality. But I managed to somehow carry that into my adulthood. And I didn't realize that that was unique. And I think, I'm 38, so I'm kind of in that elder millennial-ish age bracket. And many of us, I think when we've become parents, my age and older for sure, we have had these similar reckonings with our own perspective on things. And I think we really have seen this with food. I make many, many, many comparisons to food because I think it's very apt that many of us are at a place where we are able to recognize the way we were kind of raised around food in this sort of like Snackwell 100-calorie snack bags of things era was perhaps not actually that great in the long run in terms of our relationship with food and eating, because it ended up placing a lot of morality on food and in some ways made it harder for us to look at things like the nutrition of certain foods or the purposes or different perspectives or different like components of foods. And in my mind, it's the same thing, right? It's applying that same lens to leisure, essentially, because a lot of uses of technology and screen time, especially for kids, are essentially leisure time. There are ways we're spending our time. And sometimes it's not leisure. Sometimes it's utility, especially into adulthood. But for kids, it's often leisure. And I just don't think that moral policing of these things, that's not empowering, right? Like fear or guilt or shame, those are not empowering. I am not going to make proactive decisions when I'm feeling bad about things. And instead, looking at with the moral neutrality lens, it allows us to look at the purpose it's serving and the other functions it might be having. So just as Cheetos and broccoli can have equal moral value, that doesn't mean I serve them the same amount. It doesn't mean they have the same nutritional properties. It doesn't mean I'm going to eat them with the same frequencies. And when we bring in that same lens to aspects of technology like gaming or screens, I think it really broadens how we're able to look at them because we're able to see them as still serving a purpose. And that doesn't mean we want them to be serving the same purpose or same function as other parts of our lives with the same frequency, but we can remove the moral weight out of it because it's not really going to serve us, right? If I feel bad about my kid being on a screen, that doesn't help me address maybe the purpose it's serving, and it doesn't alleviate the barriers that are maybe requiring or necessitating that I'm using it to begin with.
Right. And with that analogy, I think that's a great analogy with food and diet culture. What do we know happens when people diet? That scarcity and restriction ends up in going to the other end of the extreme, right?
Yes.
Overeating. And then you're losing all these positives like enjoying food, like the joy of eating, right? And I can definitely see how parents get sucked into that with screen time. And not to blame parents, because I actually really think media has done a terrible disservice to parents around screen time and instilled a lot of fear.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I think this is one of the things that makes my place on the internet a bit more unique and is also very difficult, is that it is the internet is not particularly good at nuance. Social media is not good at nuance, and nuance doesn't sell. Like
Right.
nuance is not pithy.
Right.
Nuance isn't a soundbite. Nuance doesn't sell books. Like
Yep.
fear sells. Fear is compelling. Fear gets you to engage, and it's simple. And it also, I mean, you can probably speak to this better than I can, but it feels good. Like it feels good to be able to pinpoint something and go, aha, like that's the problem. I have found the problem.
Yep.
And if I can just scapegoat a bunch of things off on something, then that means it's not me. It means it's not my kid. It means it's not my parenting. But in a bigger, broader lens, it also, I mean, frankly, it can kind of become this like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain thing.
Right.
Of like the Wizard of Oz, where it can be like, oh, no. You don't need to start asking questions about why is it we don't have paid childcare, like paid parental leave? Why is it we don't have affordable childcare? Why is it that we don't have like subsidized affordable housing? Don't ask those questions, right? Because those are factors that make it so families need to rely on things like screen time because they don't have the capacity or systemic supports to have other ways of meeting that need. But that's so much harder to talk about.
And to change, right?
Yes. Right. And is so much simpler instead to be like, oh, no. It's not that. It's that your kid's on a screen too much. We're not going to ask, why is your kid on a screen? We're not going to ask what barrier needs to be lifted so that you could have your child on a screen less. And that's not pithy. That's not a soundbite.
It's complex. It's hard. It's hard work to untangle these things. But I completely agree. I've written my own pieces about how the especially smartphone debate takes us right away from really paying attention to what's going on with our kids and the parents. I talk a lot too about parental stress and how there's a downstream effect on kids. And that's caused by these structural issues, economic issues. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about smartphones, right? And yeah, so clearly you and I are on the same page, which is why.
Oh, always good to know. Yeah.
But I want to get a little bit into just some of the misguidance out there. And one thing is this famous 2-hour screen limit. Can you talk about what's wrong with that? I think a lot of parents latch onto that because, again, it's simple, it's clear.
It's a number. Give me a number.
Right? But what's wrong with that 2-hour screen limit?
The AAP has not actually used these guidelines for the better part of a decade at this point. And what they now use, I like quite a bit because now their guidelines are to make what they call a family media plan. And they encourage families to ask questions like, why are we using screens? Like, what's the purpose? What is the scenario? Are we doing it all together as opposed to a kid being isolated in their room on their own device? How are we integrating it into the rest of our lives? I think that is a much more sustainable and manageable view. And yet, despite the fact that that has not been, like they haven't used the objective like time metrics in many years, that is still what you find. Like if you Google like screen time amounts for kids, you're going to see these old, outdated metrics from the AAP that, as you mentioned, kind of top out around 2 hours and start, at none underage 2, except for like video calling. And then it's, up to an hour between 2 and 5, and then up to 2 hours between 5 and 12, and then parental discretion over 12. And of course, even within that, it would say, up to an hour or 2 hours of air quotes, high quality content, which again is like we
what
could
is
have a
that?
whole separate hour conversation about what is high quality content. But I was really fascinated about where did these really come from, and really tried to dig into that when I was doing my research chapter. And, unfortunately kind of confirmed what I already suspected, which is that they don't really come from anything.
Yep.
They are not based on any studies that they were doing that looked at impacts above or below those numbers. However, one thing that the AAP did mention when they debuted these guidelines is that they were cognizant and wanting to prevent childhood obesity. That it was done partially trying to minimize like high BMI. And obviously there's already stuff to unpack about why BMI is not a worthy metric either. But it was really done to try and find this quote unquote balance between, movement and minimizing being sedentary. And I mean, there's a lot to already say, about how that's already kind of misguided because screen time and being in movement are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Right.
And that also assumes that like for every minute a child is sitting and looking at a screen, if they weren't on that screen, they would be like doing wind sprints or something.
Yeah, right.
It assumes that like
very enriching if they weren't spending that minute on a screen.
Right. Yes. It assumes one is a direct replacement of the other. And I found that, again, not entirely surprising, but I was initially surprised in sort of that way of going, oh, why am I surprised by this? I shouldn't be surprised by this. Of course. And once again, it's all related, right? All this stuff gets very intertwined of the way that we might have a literal diet culture or a fat phobic culture that then intersects with the way that those can apply to other areas of our lives. And I think the other downside to those sorts of guidelines is that it oversimplifies. It takes all the dimension and all the nuance out of it, frankly, and it gets families, myopically focused on one metric that frankly might be kind of meaningless.
Yes.
Right? If it's like, okay, if you're a caregiver who's being told that actually, keep it under an hour, but under an hour is fine, and you're putting your kid in front of the TV and they're watching 2 episodes of Paw Patrol and then they are bouncing off the walls and screaming when it's time to turn it off and throwing things. Well, that parent is going to go, but wait, I thought this was an okay amount of time. It's under an hour. This is supposed to be fine. And then they are back in that shame place going, it must be my fault. It must be my kid. It must be this, that, the other. And it instead being able to say, okay, that didn't work well. So that wasn't great. Doesn't feel good for me. Probably doesn't feel good for my kid. And I can look at that neutrally and as data and go, okay, I still would like 45 minutes, but that 45 minutes didn't feel good. What can I try differently? Could I try a different show? Could we try something like going outside before we watch? Could we have a really smooth transition to something that's kind of still a preferred task after? Finding ways to problem solve what isn't working to make it more sustainable. But when we're just focused on the number, then we're losing everything else. And if we think about kids who are growing up into adults, I don't want my kid focused on just the number. I want my kid focused on how do I feel?
Exactly.
What else do I need to be doing in my day? Yeah. Right? If it's midterms, then I don't want my kid thinking, oh, I can play for up to an hour because an hour is fine. I'm like, no, not if you have a midterm and you need to go study, right? And if it's the week after midterms and everything's done, like, I don't know, play 3 hours if it feels okay to you and you have nothing else to do, fine. But it's harder to have those conversations about all the variability if we're just focused on one metric.
Have you heard me rave about the Silver Linings Handbook podcast yet? Well, I'm here to do it again. This long-form interview format offers depth and humanity to the ever-fascinating topics of true crime, cults, and of course, the psychology underlying it all. I respect host Jason Blair's ability to bring humanity to the headlines and to dig deep into the nuance of what drives people to do the unthinkable. I'm currently listening to his interview with FBI profiler Julie Cowley about the 2022 University of Idaho murders. I appreciate how the purpose of the podcast isn't to entertain at the expense of people who have suffered, but to help us all understand at least a little more how the unimaginable comes to pass. Whether it's the pull of a cult or behind the scenes of someone who becomes a murderer, this podcast doesn't exploit. It helps us learn more about humanity. If you love Psychologists Off the Clock, I bet you'll love Silver Linings Handbook. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at www.silverliningspod.com/POTC. Something I really appreciate, and you've already touched on this, but you spend more time on it in your book than I have seen other people who write about this topic, including myself. And that is social equity concerns. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes. So in my Instagram page, I've said I have 3 central tenets, which is that screens should benefit whole families, that we should be having whole family-based discussions, which is kind of the premise of my book in general, that screens can be the part of our lives without being the center of our lives, and that screen time is a social inequity issue. And we see a lot of calls. We've already kind of touched on this a bit, but we see so much get placed and blamed on technology. And we also see so much get blamed on the individual and kind of put on the individual as a responsibility, like as if they want their kid to have less screen time, they just need to basically martyr themselves further by taking more on with less to make that possible. But in many cases, these are issues that an individual is having to bear the brunt of that was not an individual's fault to begin with, right? When we look at things like not having paid parental leave, not having affordable, accessible childcare, not having safe access to the outdoors, climate, disability, neurodivergence, not even touching on things like systemic racism. I mean, all of those things are going to make it more or less possible for a child to be out in the world. If I'm a caregiver where I'm a single parent or my partner's working the swing shift or overnights or something, and I have 3 kids or 1 kid and they're crawling underfoot, and my option is my kid is running around and potentially being unsafe or like getting my neighbor to complain about the noise. And I'm throwing microwave chicken nuggets into the microwave for the 3rd night in a row because that's all I can do. If that's one option, or the other option is my kid sits and watch a 30-minute TV show and I can breathe and decompress for the first time all day long and make, a can of jarred pasta sauce and some noodles and some frozen broccoli. But that's going to be, a better alternative to 3 days of microwave chicken nuggets, not knocking microwave chicken nuggets. But if it also means that I get to sit down at the table and be a more present, regulated caregiver, like which of those is ultimately better?
Right.
The kid who had 30 minutes of screen time and is getting a more nutritiously diverse meal, and a parent who is not completely dysregulated, I would say that is better than having a parent who's like, oh no, got to keep him off a screen. Just got to do whatever I got to do. And that just puts all of that. Once again, this is a problem that was caused by individualism in a lot of ways and not looking out for the collective. And then we've put the brunt on it back on the individual. And so when we hear people say like, well, kids are on screens too much and they just need to be independent, just send them outside. I'm like, okay, very, very few people have the privilege of being able to just do that.
And again, questioning the why of that.
Right.
Like, really, is that hour of screen time so damaging? Like, even questioning the premise. I think it's really a paradigm shift compared to what is the normal perspective on screen time right now in this climate, right? And it's a paradigm shift to moral neutrality. And what are we actually worried about?
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good question. Like, what are we actually worried about? I think for a lot of parents, that probably feels really ambiguous. I would wonder if many caregivers even have an answer to that of like, what is it we're really worried about? And I'm not sure I do. Like, kind of trying to channel that in my inner self. I'm not sure I could answer that question, but I think that we have been influenced to put anything that we're worried about in that category, right? Like we kind of lump everything in there, and I'm worried that they won't want to do anything else. I'm worried that they'll be
addicted.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yes.
We'll get into that one.
Oh my God.
That's an
quote unquote addicted. They'll be lazy. They won't ever want to do anything else ever again, or that it's going to affect, and then all the, it could affect this, that, the other thing. I think it's just also recognizing, I would love to say that we live in a world where we can unring the bell regarding the ubiquity of technology in our world. Honestly, I would. I think people assume that because I am not anti-screen, that I must always be pro-screen, and that is not at all true. Moral neutrality is not just like a rubber stamp on every use of a thing. Again, similar to food, like we can be morally neutral about Cheetos, and I'm not putting Cheetos on every meal that we eat. So I'm not like pro technology. Often I actually want to use it less, especially in education. But again, that's a systemic issue, right? We need to have equitably funded schools. We need to have companies that have gone back to physical textbooks and manipulatives and away from AI-driven software tools that are trying to replace educators. Like, again, big problem, not a simple solution there. But I would love nothing more than to be able to actually go out in the world and not need my phone.
Right.
Like, and I would love nothing more than to park my car and not have to scan a QR code to pay for parking.
I know. I mean, that's the problem is even if you want to leave your phone, then you're completely ineffective in the world. You can't navigate the world.
They are essentially a utility. They have become like having to, like needing to have internet access and frankly needing to have a smartphone have become like necessity. The same as other. Yes, they really have. So when we're talking about like preventing our teens from having smartphones and all that, all I can think is like I'm not saying that we should be handing phones out to kids at any age, right? Yeah. No, absolutely not. But it is not something that is going to be almost at all possible to avoid. And even though I would love for that to be the case, it probably is not. And so if we really feel that there is an over-reliance on technology in these varying parts of the world or kids' lives, then blaming the technology doesn't help that. Like, again, it feels good, but it does not actually address why they have become a necessity. Right. So if that really bothers people, then we need to be targeting the systemic inequities that are causing that over-reliance in the first place, right? Because otherwise, it's the equivalent of someone has like a 3-inch gash on their arm and we stick a Band-Aid on it and then we're mad at the Band-Aid for not doing a good enough job, right? Like it's not the Band-Aid's fault. Like you need stitches, right? And so it's the same thing. We're blaming the Band-Aid that it's not doing a good enough job instead of actually addressing the underlying issue. But again, that's not simple, much harder, requires a lot more digging in, and much bigger solutions like requiring, government and regulation and company collectivism, right? And so it's much simpler to be like, I don't know, individual caregiver, try harder.
Right.
And that, just like, I don't know, have you tried doing less for yourself? It's like, yes, most default caregivers, in fact, have tried that. Also not sustainable.
Well, and just to kind of piggyback onto the idea of this is the world we're living in, we can't unring the bell, and it's such a necessity to have a smartphone navigating the world these days. This is a good segue into something that you may not realize you and I have in common, which is a love of self-determination theory. So self-determination theory lays the scientific foundation of my book on autonomy supportive parenting, and you use it to build your argument about how to more effectively parent when it comes to screens. So again, just a quick reminder for listeners, this is looking at needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness as the 3 fundamental human needs for a more fulfilled, higher quality of life. It's backed up by decades of science. So let's talk about it. I'm so excited. When I saw that in your book, I said, they're coming on. So could you talk about how self-determination theory relates to screens?
Absolutely. This is so funny to me because actually, like the first thing I ever talked about almost a decade ago when I was in education looking at, how can we make education feel game-like, not this like quote unquote gamification where it's like everything becomes a badge and a reward chart, but like actually how do we make it feel like a game? What is it that games do? And this is the place I started because games make us anything we enjoy doing, right? Like it's the whole idea of intrinsic motivation that things we enjoy doing are going to give us these needs. They're going to make us feel in control, somehow relating to other people and sure of ourselves, confident, competent in some way. And video games are incredibly good at doing this, and they do it in many ways. And this kind of gets with what people talk about when they say like, oh, they're addicting. I'm like, well, I mean, yes, some games are set up more like gambling and they can be addicting. But if you think about a commercial off the shelf video game that you'd pay 40, 50, 60 bucks for, right? If you're playing a Zelda game or a Mario game, that game isn't tricking you into playing more. A game that did that, frankly, you wouldn't want to play much because it would not be giving you these feelings. But instead, it's giving you a feeling of, I have control in this world. This is why a lot of kids like things like Minecraft, because there's kind of no rules at all and you can kind of do whatever. And they are given so much autonomy. And especially after a day of school, they're really craving that. They have zero autonomy at school. I say as a public school educator, they have zero autonomy all day long. They're just craving autonomy. And then they can open up a world and no one is going to tell them that they're doing the wrong thing and that doesn't go there. And why are you doing that? And they can just do whatever. And then when they get an idea, they can continue to work toward completing it. Or if they're playing something more objective driven, they see the level they want to try and complete and they can try to keep going there. And they're going to fail. They're going to fail again and again and again and again. But when they fail, the game says nothing. Like the game gives almost no feedback of any kind. The game doesn't say, why do you keep doing that? You keep trying that. I think you should stop. Or do you need help? Are you sure you know what you're doing? Like the game just says, here's the goal. Like do it or don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be here when you get back.
Right. Really.
Right. And so then when they do succeed, they get this rush of competence. It's like, oh my gosh, I did it. Right. I did the thing. And they're not doing it for stars and badges and external rewards necessarily. I mean, obviously there are things that then it allows you to access further in the game, but you have to care about the game and you have to care about what you're doing for that to even be meaningful. So I brought that into the book because really that's just about intrinsic motivation, right? If we were to substitute talking about video games right now with talking about learning to paint or spin clay on a wheel or kick goals in soccer, we could see all of those same things, those same psychological needs being met. But when they're met through one of those other hobbies, we're very quick to go, oh, isn't that great? They just want to go to soccer every single day. Yeah. We would probably not say, I'm really worried they're getting addicted to soccer. They want to play soccer every day. Right. But we would say that about screens. And when I bring that up, people will say, well, they're designed differently. I'm like, yeah, they are designed differently. And once again, to go to food, like we have so many foods that are literally engineered to make us want to eat them.
Yep.
Right. Snack food. Yes. But like Honeycrisp apples are engineered so we want to eat them. Right. Like most foods we eat are engineered so we want to eat them. And that is all the more reason that we do talk to kids about like, how they make us feel, or wow, I could eat a whole bag of Cheetos and still kind of feel hungry. Why is that? That doesn't mean they're a bad food, just means that they are a different kind of food. And if I'm really hungry, eating a whole bag of Cheetos isn't going to help me, right? Yep. It allows us to have those more nuanced conversations. Have you read Glued on Gaming by Rigby and Ryan?
No.
Okay, I cite it a lot in my book. When I first read it, when I was doing research for this book, I had a moment of absolute panic because it's basically a book. Well, it's Ryan of self-determination theory, yes. Ryan. And it is about applying these theories to video games. And I read this last year after I had already been talking about this for most of a decade. So I had this moment of like, oh my God, have I been inadvertently plagiarizing these people? But no, they published it after I had started talking about it. So I was like, okay, phew, we're fine. But the Glued on Gaming, which has sort of a fear-based title, it's great. It is all about applying elements of self-determination theory to games and really interrogating, like, no, it probably isn't addiction. No, it probably isn't just a constant dopamine drip. It is a lot more nuanced than that. And they have a fantastic chapter specifically about what they call the need density hypothesis.
Yeah, you get into that in your book a little bit.
Yes, where they're talking about how like, yes, these things are meeting needs. And yes, there are other ways of meeting those needs. Like I could go kick goals in soccer, or I could play FIFA soccer.
Yep.
And
You're describing my son, by the way, who I was.
oh, perfect.
Oh.
Well, and their need density hypothesis basically says, look, like a video game is going to accomplish that need satisfaction more consistently, more immediately, and more densely.
Yeah.
Because the game's going to behave the same way every time. It's giving you immediate and consistent feedback. And therefore, you're getting that feeling of competence or autonomy or relatedness more densely, like more quickly than if you were to go do that out in the real world. But what they bring up is that is not necessarily bad, right? Like if that is the only way that they're meeting that need, then that it can be something that leads to an unhealthy or potentially quote unquote addictive relationship to something. But again, that isn't unique to technology.
Yes.
That can be anything. But their point, which I think is a great one, is, we don't want that to be the only way that someone is meeting a need. If they think every time I come home from school, I'm so tired of being told what to do, I want to feel in control. If the only way they know how to feel in control is to play Minecraft, then that's what they're going to do every day. But that's not because they're addicted to Minecraft. It's because they want to feel in control.
Yeah.
And why I think it's so important to stay neutral is that if I'm blaming the screen, then all I see as the problem is my kid likes Minecraft too much. But if I'm staying neutral and going, what is it they like?
Yeah.
What are they getting from this?
What needs are being met?
Exactly. What need is being satisfied by this? And if it's a chance to explore freely and feel in control, there are many ways to achieve that, right? And now I can go, oh, okay. So yes, you can play Minecraft for half an hour, and then we're going to build with Lego, or we're going to draw freely, or we're going to make a recipe. We're going to make something in the kitchen without a recipe, right?
Right.
There's so many ways to achieve that feeling. And that doesn't mean kids are always going to like that as much as other things, right? That's like unfortunate part of parenting, is that they're probably often not going to like those things as much. But we want them to have other ways of meeting that need so that they don't think that the only way they feel in control is playing Minecraft, because we don't want them to think, I'm only good at Minecraft, or I'm only good at that. Because what we want them to think is, oh, I'm good at being creative.
Right.
And I can be creative in all of these different ways, as opposed to I'm only good at Minecraft and my parents hate it. And so I should keep that to myself and not talk to them about it. I mean, that just goes to so many. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was thinking about it as I was finishing your book. My 11-year-old, who is a huge soccer kid, and you could say maybe obsessed with soccer, he injured his ankle at a game and he couldn't play, which was a huge loss for him for a week and a half, right? And so what did he do? He played a lot
FIFA
more.
Yeah.
Yep. And it happened to be the same week that the new one came out. So so much excitement, right? And he played a lot more video games. And he kept saying, but I can't play real soccer. So he was meeting his needs in that way. And to me, if I weren't thinking along your lines, I would have seen a kid who is playing too many video games. Right? But instead, really being able to formulate what needs are being met.
Right.
And it's actually helping him cope with this.
Right. I'm glad you brought it. Yes, the coping. Right. Well, I think that's something we also hear a lot with the quote unquote addiction, or the dopamine has become this 4-letter word, particularly with technology. And oh my gosh, I hate it. But that also of like, well, it's just this constant dopamine and they're addicted. And sometimes, like you said, it's to substitute for something that is inaccessible in some way. Yeah. And sometimes it is coping. And that doesn't always mean that it is like sustainable coping. But, in the case of your kid, it's like we're talking about a week, right? A week and a half. We're not talking about like 6 months in a body cast or something, right? Then we'd be having a different conversation.
Yeah.
So another benefit of that neutrality is that if I'm myopically focused on, minutes or whatever thing I'm thinking is very important, I'm trying to minimize screen time as much as possible, I'm going to look at my kid trying to play more FIFA for a week and go, oh, this is a problem, right? As opposed to, no, the problem is his foot is hurt. Like the problem is he's injured.
His favorite
right?
thing in the world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, if he instead were wanting to read soccer magazines all day or even watch soccer.
Well, right. Which he also did, by the way. So he watched games and listened to a soccer podcast, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't just FIFA.
But the thing that would stand out to us is probably
FIFA.
FIFA. Right. Not the looking at soccer magazines or watching footage or listening to podcasts or what have you.
Right.
Yeah. So with like coping, and I think this also probably goes along with dopamine and where we're getting it from. I've had these conversations in podcasts before where sometimes we do need the lowest hanging fruit, right? Screens, tech, whatever, sugar, there can be this sort of lowest hanging fruit of maybe dopamine. And that can also be more of a coping mechanism as opposed to like a long-term, more sustainable strategy of coping. Right. But sometimes we need that to bridge us to a more sustainable thing. I've mentioned this in podcasts before, but if I'm very anxious, like if my brain is churning on a million things, I've tried many things, right? If you came up to me in that moment and you were like, let's take a deep breath and do a meditation, I would be like, get out of my face.
Exactly.
Right? I would be like, I'll tell you where we're going to be doing a guided meditation. Like I couldn't access it, right? It's inaccessible to me.
Right.
And sometimes people will say they'll, watch a comfort TV show. No, I can't do that because my brain is like, oh, we can keep churning and keep doom spiraling while you're watching your comfort TV show. For me, if I am really struggling with that kind of thought, what I need to do is I need to watch Jackass movies. And it is amazing how fast this works for me. Like I can watch 15 minutes and be like, I'm fine. Okay. I'm okay now. Not like I'm fixed.
It's like a dose. That's your dose that works.
Right. Well, because it's compelling enough I have to pay attention. Because if I'm not paying attention, it's not actually entertaining anymore. Right. You can't half watch that. You miss the fun thing.
Right.
I have to watch. I have to pay attention. I laugh. Right. So like I'm obviously getting like some positive feelings, right? I'm laughing, right? I'm often doing it with my spouse. So there's like some amount of a casual connection happening and it breaks me out of it, right? Enough so that then I could go, okay, could I read a book now? Right? Could I get up and move my body now? Right? But if you just came up to me in the moment and said, let's go for a walk, like, no, I'm just going to doom spiral while we're on a walk. It's not going to help.
Yeah. Right. So it's the bridge.
Exactly. It bridges me over. And so, I've mentioned this before, but one day we were on a train in the middle of Japan and we'd been out all day long at an incredible park. Wonderful day as a family. We got on the train. We had like a 45-minute commute and I looked at my kid and went, oh no, we overspent, right?
Yeah.
That moment where you're like, oh no.
Yeah. We crossed over.
Yep. And I was like, oh, this kid is hangry. Yeah. This kid is super dysregulated. And we are in its rush hour. And we have like at least 45 minutes. And we have to do like some transfers and some train stations. And this is like go time. And I literally opened my phone and handed my kid my phone with a game I knew would not hype them up on it. And they basically just like listened to music the whole time and had a wonderful time. And they felt like they were winning. I felt like I was winning. I was like, everybody's winning because everyone else on this train is winning. And that bridged them over. So then we could talk, play a game of I Spy, do something else, get on with our lives. But if we're always thinking about how that thing is bad because it's easy dopamine or it's addicting or whatever.
Right.
Again, different things are going to have different purposes in our lives. And if my kid stayed up way too late and they're exhausted the next day in college, imagine if I were like, no, you shouldn't get a latte. That's a quick fix. You just need to get more sleep. Cool. That doesn't help in the immediate, right? We can do the quick fix. Exactly. We can do the quick fix and the long-term solution. We want to know what's the right tool for the job.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. And now, max out your savings. The more you buy, the more you save on beds, bases, and more. Plus, get free home delivery on any smart bed with base. Limited time. Check it out at a Sleep Number store near you or at sleepnumber.com today.
I just set up all my financial accounts at Monarch, and I am so pleased with how unbelievably easy it was. I totally get why users and financial experts are in love with Monarch. You will feel organized and confident in your finances with Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or your phone. And right now, just for our listeners, Monarch is offering 50% off your first year with code OFFTHECLOCK at monarch.com. Before Monarch, our family finances felt like they were all over the place, and we never really had an accurate picture of our assets and liabilities at any given moment. And now with Monarch, we finally do. We actually feel like grown-ups. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code OFFTHECLOCK at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code OFFTHECLOCK. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you're supporting the podcast.
So I do want to just take a quick stop on dopamine because as a psychologist, the way popular media often discusses dopamine really frustrates me.
I was going to say, I bet you must be so angry. Like,
Yes.
It makes me angry and I'm not in the profession.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, just remember, anything pleasurable releases dopamine. It doesn't mean it's addictive.
I cannot tell you how validating this is because I'm saying that, but I'm not a psychologist, right?
Right,
So like,
well-
I'm fully aware that I am not a professional, but I feel pretty confident here. I'm not saying this for no reason. Anything. I mean, I've mentioned that a lot where I'm like, a hot tub is going to do that. Like
Yes.
anything. Because it's literally how we decide that we like something, right?
Right.
Like if it didn't release dopamine, we wouldn't like it.
Yeah. So like cocaine and video games are different.
Yes. Actually, the book I mentioned earlier, Rigby and Ryan's Glued on Gaming, they bring up this, what they call the dopamine hypothesis. Yep. And they use this exact thing where they say, cocaine is a chemical, right? Right. Video games are not a substance. They're not a chemical, right? They're an activity.
Right. It's like cocaine is changing your brain because it's going into your body, whereas it's a chemical agent going into your body that changes your brain. Whereas video games, it's all the external experience of the video game that is affecting the dopamine release.
Right. And the oversimplification of that in many ways, like that comparison is so insidious, I think, in a lot of ways, and predatory, I think, on parents. But also it imagines that video games are one thing.
Yes.
And I find that to be such an outdated, like, frankly, a really outdated way of looking at them. I'm like, is this 1985? Why are we talking about video games as if they are like one thing? Video games are thousands of different iterations and versions and lengths and delivery mechanisms.
And they're not inherently addictive in any way. If you think of, for example, I do not enjoy video games. I have tried. I have sat down with them. They're not my thing.
Thank you.
They don't release dopamine for my brain.
Exactly. I've said this before, like, I don't like Minecraft.
Right.
Like, you could stick me in a room for a month. I'm not going to come out addicted to Minecraft because I don't like Minecraft.
Right.
So, like, no, it is not just some insidious dopamine machine.
Right.
I am not going to like it. There are certain kinds of activities that I do or do not like. And again, if you go back to like the things that are intrinsically motivating, the kinds of video games I like are similar in their kind of objective seeking structure to other things I like. Like in my bio, I say I like baking and hiking and video games, and they are very similar. They're very objective driven, or at least the video games I like are very objective driven, where it's like, here's a recipe, follow it, you get the product. Here's a hiking trail, follow it, you get to the place. Here's an objective in a video game, do it, you succeed. And a kid who's really into Minecraft, they probably would prefer not having a recipe. They would probably would prefer doing maybe like a martial art where it's really improvisatory, like sparring and jujitsu, as opposed to learning forms in karate or taekwondo. And figuring out why do they like this thing? And it's probably not because it's, an evil dopamine factory, right? It's probably much more, it's giving them a feeling. And I hope that this is true when we're talking about, addiction or a relationship to something that's less helpful. It's much less about the thing and much more about our relationship to the thing.
And what's going on with us. So I think when we're worried about our kids using screens too much, let's say that's our worry, that it seems one of the questions I ask, is it replacing other activities that are meant to fulfill needs also? So, and you do bring this up. It's like when it's the one way to try and meet all the needs, then that's more problematic. But you cite research that when that's happening, those kids and teenagers are not receiving as much well-being from the playing of the video game.
Yes, I thought that was so fascinating. And I think that also came from that Rigby and Ryan book where they talked about how when they looked at players who really did have an unhealthy relationship with games, they were playing to avoid a negative feeling more than they were like trying to achieve a good one. So like people who did not have a problematic relationship, they reported feeling better after playing. They felt more competent. They felt more in control. Again, this need satisfaction. But the players who had a less healthy relationship with the game, even though they played all the time, they reported less satisfaction after they were done. So for them, it was more about avoiding the negative, right? Avoiding how bad I feel. So I have to try and feel a little better. And again, it's about the relationship with the thing.
Right.
And I do think it is important to think about the other ways that we can meet this need. I think that's kind of we have to be able to get there, because the phrase of like, what is the screen replacing is quite common in the sort of screen time parenting advice areas. And I honestly I don't really like that phrase, because if you are kind of entering into this space, or you're a parent who's coming from a place of seeing them as bad, if we say, well, just ask yourself what it's replacing, you can come up with 15 things that they're replacing that you think are better, right? Probably a bunch of things that you would never have your kid actually do.
Or they wouldn't want to do. That's the other thing. We have all these grand ideas for their enrichment, but they don't want to do those things.
Right. But people will be like, well, they could just be doing nothing and staring into space. They could be reorganizing their toys, right? Like we're going to come up with anything because the supposition there is because screens should only be okay after everything else of more value has been done. And it's okay to just have leisure. Like leisure we need leisure in our lives. So, but I think what you're saying is also important. We don't want it to be the only way they're meeting a need.
Exactly. And so it's just having, again, I think the morally neutral perspective really helps our emotional response to their screen time. I'm so grateful we had our time today for this discussion. And I really wish we had about double the time because there's so much more. But I really thought these points were the most important kind of foundational shifts for parents and caregivers, anyone working with kids, to really hear this way of thinking as a way to start shifting into changing behaviors. So I will give a shout out to the entirety of your book, which we could not get into all of it, but there's a lot of very specific strategies. And you give some really important frameworks for exactly what to do and choices around how to create this screen time kind of approach in every family in a flexible way.
And I will say, if people are hearing that and they're like, oh no, please don't tell me exactly what to do. Like, I would say it's much more choose your own adventure. There is no one right way, right?
Yeah. I almost laughed when you have this huge list of all these potential responses after something has gone poorly. But my favorite was your last option, which was do nothing. And I love this because sometimes things are just hard and we don't need to fix it or have some grand solution. Sometimes it was just hard and we can move on. So that's just a taste of your like very balanced, realistic approach.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you brought that one up. Yes, because sometimes it's like, hey, maybe this isn't a problem that needs to be solved. Maybe it's just hard.
We just
try
let it
again
go.
tomorrow.
Yeah. So, Ash, thank you so much for everything that you do in the world.
Oh,
and
thank
for
you.
coming on today. Where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at The Gamer Educator on Instagram. I have a Substack in which I just cross-post everything. So you can, like, if you don't really want to engage with social media, my Substack is also at The Gamer Educator, and you can get everything I put on Instagram for free and just ends up in your email inbox or your Substack app. And then my book, Power On, Managing Screen Time to Benefit the Whole Family, is available wherever you buy books, paperback, ebook, or audiobook. And if you feel strongly about the sound of my voice, I read my audiobook so that can sway you one way or the other.
Thank you so much, Ash.
Thank you.
So I'm here with Debbie to talk about my conversation that you just listened to with Ash Brandin. And I am so eager to hear Debbie's thoughts because we're actually recording this just the day after I talked to Ash, and it's still really fresh in my head, and I still have lots of thoughts. So Debbie, what was your take on the conversation?
Can I start by just singing your praises, Emily? You might feel embarrassed, but just don't edit this out because I just want people to know how, to me, you are the voice of reason when it comes to all things parenting. And so as a parent, recently I've had a couple things that were a little bit difficult as a parent to try to navigate. And I thought to myself multiple times, what would Emily say about this? And I've been known to go look things up on your Substack and in your book when I'm just feeling lost at sea.
Oh, that's like the highest praise ever for someone putting content out there.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, I feel like we're sort of like-minded in a lot of ways. We have similar values around a lot of issues. And I just think that sometimes we need the voice of reason in this world. You mentioned the role of media and these cultural factors and how we moralize. And there's a lot of fearful messages out there. And I think we have to stay grounded. And to me, this conversation that you had with Ash was another just really helpful, nuanced conversation about this really complex world of screens and social media. It was great.
Our goal was to really work on mindset, and the book is full of really specific strategies and techniques and plans. So it's not just theory, but I thought it was so fundamental to really examine how we think about screens as a starting point to then make behavior change. And even with my mission to be very grounded and calm and reasonable, I get swept up in the fear and panic just like everyone else. And like I said, with my own son who started to do more gaming when he was injured, I started to feel a little anxiety about it. And I think that is a result of our cultural climate. So even the best of us, the most well-intentioned, the most well-informed, the most thoughtful, get swept up in the anxiety.
Well, one thing I just wanted to revisit from the conversation, because we see it in so many different ways, is this idea of moralizing and cultural narratives around things. And of course, you make the parallel with diet culture and food and how we vilify and moralize. And, since I do a lot of work in this space of burnout, I'm really attuned to how we moralize around rest and productivity. And one part of that is cyber loafing. So even for adults and then also for our kids, I think a lot of times we get these strong cultural messages about something rather than asking that really important question, like, how's this working for me? And with cyber loafing, I'll just kind of elaborate on that because I really do feel better if I'm not on my phone too much, if I'm not scrolling around on Instagram all the time. I actually took it off my phone because I was like, this is just, I know it's not that great for me. I'd rather read and then go to bed early. And so I feel better. But then I also think there's a time and a place for cyber loafing. Like there are nights when I'm like, I just feel like doing that. And I don't want to then add to that by getting in this panic or shame spiral around it.
Or guilt. I think
guilt.
there can be a lot of guilt.
Like that's bad, Yeah. And so I just think being aware of those cultural messages, whether it's for our kids or us, it can really help us see things clearly. And again, how's this working for me?
And I love the frame of screen time as leisure.
Yes.
That this is a form of leisure and we don't need to moralize the leisure. I know that one of my greatest loves is at the end of every night when I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, I'm doing my New York Times word games on my iPad. So I'm on a screen. I'm doing things on two screens because I'm also watching a show. I'm doing all the no-nos. And yet it feels so good for my brain. So I'm just going to accept it and enjoy it and
Should
not
we start
moralize.
Texting each other our wordles, Emily?
Yeah.
Because that'd be fun. I also think there's a little bit of this false sense that we weren't on screens a few decades ago. And we just went to this 90s exhibit at the History Colorado Museum. And I took my kids to it. And it was really fun. And there were all these things about pop culture and me. And I was just remembering all the TV, MTV,
So much TV.
Nintendo. I think sometimes it's almost like we think those were the good old days when we were just never on screens. And it's like, well, the technology has changed, but I spent a lot of time watching TV and loafing around as a kid. And it's like, did it harm me? I don't know, maybe, but not really. I don't think.
Look at us now. Look at us now.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, we're having good lives. We're living
Look
good.
how we turned out. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I really hope listeners got a lot out of this. And, my biggest hope with any of our episodes is that people end up making really positive change, concrete change in their lives. And so hopefully this can help parents and other adults with kids, who are around kids, just have a more relaxed and calm approach to screens. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock. You can now listen to our podcast ad-free by becoming a supporter on Patreon. You can link to Patreon on our website or go to patreon.com/offtheclocksite. If you enjoy our podcast, you can help us out by leaving a review and sharing this episode with a friend or an enemy who would enjoy it.
You can get more psychology tips by subscribing to our fabulous newsletter on Substack. Or if you're still addicted to social media, find us on Instagram and LinkedIn.
We'd like to thank our rockstar production manager, Jadine Stout-Williams.
Now for the boring part. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for mental health treatment. If you're looking for mental health treatment, please visit the resources page of our website, offtheclockpsych.com.